Welcome to another edition of Half Hour on the Hill. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge. My guest today is Acton Selectman Francis Osman. Franny, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And we have worked for many years on especially transportation issues in Acton.
Yes.
Even before you were elected as a selectman.
Yes.
And what I am seeing in my district is more and more communities looking at expanding shuttle service.
Yes.
So in the district I represent, we just expanded the Metro West Regional Transit Authority shuttle service to the town of Hudson.
Excellent.
More recently, there's a partnership with the Montechusett Area Regional Transportation Commission, MART, on connecting Ayr, Shirley, Devens, Fitchburg, and Leominster to bring workers, especially to Devens. But
Wonderful.
We've had a tremendous success story here in Acton with Crosstown Connect, which I really see you as the driver of creating that. And just sort of wanted to...
Not really the driver.
Right. Good
Other
point.
kind of driver.
That's right. There's a lot of references here about driving and transportation. But yeah, I was just curious, sort of, my sense is that you decided to run for office in part because of your passion for transportation, and where did that passion come from, and sort of what is your vision on that?
Okay. I'm not really sure where the passion came from. It's interesting. I grew up with a father who was legally blind and then completely blind eventually. But that wasn't where my awareness of the need for public transportation came from, that I really knew. I was driving kids around town and seeing all these lined up cars and thinking how unecological that was.
Sure.
And I thought we should really have a bus service around town. And I decided that would be my goal, to start some kind of shuttle service. So I went to a meeting. You might have been there. 2005.
Okay. Yep.
At the Council on Aging. It was a meeting about local public transportation. And I heard like 50 people in the room talking about transportation needs, and I suddenly went, oh, why wasn't I even thinking of all the people who don't drive and the people who have a parking crunch at the train station?
Sure.
So suddenly I had many reasons to try to get a transportation system going.
Okay, sure.
Out of that formed a little committee. It had somebody from United Way, it had a selectman, it had a planner from Boxborough, the director of the renovation project, and somebody from the Commission on Disabilities. And
was that the Transportation Advisory Committee? Was that how that was created, or that was different?
not yet. Soon after that, I joined Acton's Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay.
But we started looking into it and talking to the planning agency, MAPC, about what the best way to start a shuttle service is. I started going to state education events about this and looking into how to do a survey. And every little step led to someone else. Someone suggested I go to a magic meeting.
Okay, sure.
And where that first meeting in Acton was sort of magical because, wow, there are other people who care about public transportation. I went to the MAGIC meeting, which is...
And what is MAGIC?
MAGIC is our
MAGIC
sub-region of our planning agency, which has about 101 towns and cities and towns.
So the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, which covers roughly this area,
yes.
Metro West.
And so it's split up into areas. So we have 13 or 14 towns that work together, and planners and selectmen, town managers meet monthly or every other month about planning issues. So it was sort of a nice pun in my mind. It was, I went to this magic meeting and it was all about transportation that day, and I thought, this is amazing. I had no idea that the towns were meeting together on issues of regional importance.
And so how did you go from that to the Crosstown Connect, and where did the state come in? So.
Okay, so I learned that we should apply for some funding through a program that doesn't exist anymore. It was called the Suburban Mobility Program.
Right.
And it used CMAQ funds, which is, my first few years I called my acronym learning phase, because there are so many acronyms in this world.
And that's a federal...
Congestion mitigation and air quality.
Money?
Yes,
right.
Federal money, but it goes through a state agency called the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, which disperses the money for these federal grant programs. I worked toward getting a grant, and I would go down to Boston to meetings. I learned how important it is to show up.
Yes, those early morning meetings, at the Transportation Building.
I continued working on that, And at the same time, there was this lovely conference in 2009. That was 2005, and we did various surveys and working at Transportation Advisory Committee. I went to a conference that was organized by the Community Transportation Association of America.
Okay.
And Work Without Limits, which helps people with disabilities get to work. They brought together teams from around the state, North Shore, Cape Cod, Berkshires, to discuss local planning. And we had a team that included people from Boxborough, Concord, Maynard, Acton, Stowe.
Yeah.
It was a great conference. And it brought together a group that started meeting regularly. And meanwhile, we had this grant money about to come. So we started a rail shuttle and a dial-a-ride that added to the vans that we already had for the seniors. We had the Roadrunner. We had, strangely, 2 different senior vans, the Roadrunner from Lowell and the
so sort of
Council
the
on Aging
basic
van.
service that most towns have.
Yes,
right.
out here.
Out in the suburbs.
Yes, and so we added to that. And around 2012, Governor Patrick started a program called the Community Innovation Challenge Grant.
Right. Yes.
Ideas that would save money or improve efficiency by working regionally. Doug Halley and I and other people support in town.
And Doug was the public health director.
He was the public health director, and he caught the transportation bug.
Yes.
Especially after he saw through a survey that transportation was a limitation for people around here. So we applied to bring multiple towns together. And meanwhile, ever since that conference, we had been meeting monthly or bi-monthly. You came to some of those
Came to some of the meetings.
It was
in
called
support of the
Minutevan
grant.
Regional.
Yep, that's right.
And during that, we got to know people from different towns, and people would come from our regional transit authorities. What is a regional transit authority? You know, but I'll tell our watchers. We have the MBTA, but then the MBTA covers a core region in the eastern Massachusetts. In other areas, there are regional transit authorities, and there's some funding that can move from MBTA to your regional transit authority for service through them. The regional transit authority provides the vans that do the Council on Aging transportation.
Right.
However, there's a sort of problem when you're in a middle ground, not in the hub of the MBTA or a regional transit authority. You have a problem, which is that you don't have the fixed route buses that are going around on a regular schedule. And besides the Council on Aging vans from 8 to 4, 8 to 3, you don't have transportation. So if you don't drive, you're really stuck.
Yeah.
And if you have to get to or from the train, you're also stuck.
Absolutely.
So this grant we applied for, we got, and we got it for 3 years in a row, and it helped us develop a regional system.
Right.
Where we moved into sharing more and more. We share dispatch. We get together. We've included businesses. Now, usually a Transportation Management Association, which is what we formed.
TMAs, right.
TMAs. Usually it's just businesses, you know, maybe going in and out of Alewife Station or something.
But not government.
But not municipalities.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So ours was unique in that way, and it was touted all around the state. I would continue to go to these statewide conferences. After Work Without Limits led it for a while. After that, it went under the Human Service Transportation Office.
Okay.
And the leadership a lot of times was by Aniko Laszlo, who used to work at Work Without Limits. Now she's at MassDOT. And most recently she's helping out with the ride. So these regional conferences still happen. I still learn from the Berkshires and Pioneer Valley and Cape Cod.
Sure.
I learn good ideas. But what we have in our area are multiple businesses and multiple towns. Concord's hopefully going to join.
Okay, great. Great. And what are the other towns? What are all the towns?
Share services. Maynard, Boxborough, Littleton, Acton, and Westford.
Okay.
Dispatch is shared for all of our vehicles, however we get them.
Yep.
For 4 of those towns, Boxborough, Maynard, Littleton, and Acton. And it will be very convenient to have Concord involved because a lot of our destinations are in Concord.
Right.
And people from Concord come to Acton for shopping. And
exactly.
the transportation doesn't stop at at town lines. That's the thing.
And that's
Really
what I especially
lines.
appreciate about your vision, because I think sometimes municipal officials are just looking solely for taking care of the needs of those businesses or as places to visit within a town, but obviously people go outside their town every day to doctors' offices for shopping, to see friends. So you really need that cross-town kind of interaction.
Yes. So we have a lot of advantages by sharing. Another thing we've done in Acton is we've put more taxpayer dollars into some specific programs in Acton. We have a new bus the last year or two called the CAT bus, Cross Acton Transit. There's even a tracker. You can get online, crossactontransit.com, and see where the bus is going right now.
Okay.
And it's always to the same stops.
Okay, so it's fixed route.
Yes.
Yep.
And we also have a fixed route rail shuttle, which is very popular.
Yeah, and if I could say that one of my aides who lives in West Acton Village, the way he gets to the train station each morning, because he's sharing a car with his family, is he takes the shuttle to the train station, and then at home, when he gets back at the South Acton train station, he takes the shuttle back home. So that really makes a difference from him and so many other people.
Yes, I've heard of people being able to give up a second car because they could take advantage of the rail shuttle.
Absolutely.
We also have a new fixed route bus that is a Maynard shuttle.
Okay.
That comes from Maynard Mill and Main, which used to be Clock Tower Place, to the train station, and it goes up Parker Street in Acton by some apartment complexes.
Sure.
And that's been a big success.
And that was an effort that myself and Representative Kate Hogan, and we share representing Maynard, we had secured some state funding for that at earmark, and then unfortunately Governor Baker cut that as part of his 9C cuts, but I appreciated the fact that Maynard still went ahead with the service.
Yes, and Acton's participating a little bit, I think contributing about 10% of it, because it does go up a street in Acton.
Right,
does help out a few residents there.
These shuttle services, whether those within Acton or to the other communities, who are they serving? Tell me the picture.
It varies. A lot of seniors use the.
A lot of seniors,
so, Yeah, I would say the bulk of the riders are seniors. People who don't drive or don't want to drive. People with disabilities who can't drive. Youth who don't drive yet.
Right.
And anybody from the general population who wants to give up their car or go somewhere without using their car. There's a big variety, but I would say in general it's people who don't drive who are dependent on it. I met a woman yesterday. I took the cat to the train station, and I met a woman on it. I actually made a little video I could give you. She said I could share it with anybody. She loves the cat bus because it gives her freedom to decide when she wants to go somewhere. She said, I think I'll go to Donnellan's today. And she could choose any of the hours that it came by her housing development.
That's terrific.
And she said she really liked the freedom it gave her. She also loves the driver. She uses all the services, the dial-a-ride services also.
Right, it creates that social interaction as well.
And when we formed, some people were sort of skeptical, will seniors want to go on the same van as a teenager? In fact, it's been very successful.
That is terrific.
With Minute Van, which is, it's confusing because there are so many terms, but Minute Van was the general purpose van.
Right.
But you can't really tell the difference. If you just call the dispatcher and say where you want to go, like tomorrow I need to go to Narra Park, or Tuesday, can you pick up my teenage child at the high school at 4:30 and bring them to their job at Donnellan's?
That's great. Well, it's clearly been a success, town and crosstown.
Yes.
And so we're gonna take a break now and talk in our next 15 minutes about your family's broader vision for transportation in Massachusetts. We'll be back in a moment. Hi, I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge. We're on to the second half of Half Hour on the Hill. My guest today is Francis Osman, Acton Selectman. And Franny, we've been talking about your successful efforts both to improve shuttle service in Acton as well as several other surrounding towns. But I'm curious, in a suburban area in Metro West, what sort of concerns or bothers you about the transportation network or lack thereof we have in this area?
Well, the hardest thing, I think, is when you're on the edge of something. We're on the edge of the MBTA, the edge of the Lowell Regional Transit Authority, the edge of the Montechusett.
Right.
When you're downtown, Boston or Lowell or Fitchburg, you have some fixed route, you have more services. When you're on the edge, all you have are those Council on Aging vans. And as I said, they don't cover enough hours to even let somebody work full time. So what we've been trying to do is bring those together more. I mean, look,
cross those boundaries.
Cross those boundaries.
Right.
And that's one of the amazing things that Crosstown Connects has done, is we got permission to use Montechusett vans in Lowell's region and
Right,
Lowell's vans
exactly.
in Montechusett. We had agreement amongst them. So that's very good.
Yeah, and that I think that's a great point. I think that's where the state, not only has to support more funding, but more flexibility amongst all the regional transit authorities. In the district I represent, there are 4 regional transit authorities that serve my 14 communities.
Yes, it's been great that the Metro West Transit Authority developed
Yes.
under Ed Carr's administration, and that's been great.
Absolutely.
In bringing together a lot of towns in that area.
Yep.
Now, my hope is that we can connect more of our regions to each other. I've always had a dream of connecting Framingham, Natick to Lowell, going through Maynard, Acton, Sudbury, Maynard, Acton.
With a shuttle service?
Chelmsford.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a fixed route.
Sure.
There are people, I talk to people in nursing homes who live in Lowell and work in Acton.
Right.
Or I remember talking to somebody in a laundromat who said there were people that worked there who lived in Lowell, and they would really welcome transportation
absolutely.
between regions. Also, we have the train, and you need to get to and from the train.
Exactly.
And then not only that, but this brings us to the North-South Rail Link.
Yes. I wanted to make sure to talk about that, is that I know you've been very passionate about the North-South Rail Link, and for those of our viewers who aren't familiar with it, it's an issue I've worked on for, I'd say, about 6 to 8 years.
Wow,
of connecting North Station and South Station through an underground tunnel that would go, under downtown Boston, so that, first of all, people that wanted to take commuter rail or Amtrak service from Washington, D.C. to Montreal, that you wouldn't have to get off at North or South Station to make, the next destination, but also how it would better serve the MBTA commuter rail network. And I would love to get your thoughts, because you're now on the working group for the North-South Rail Link.
Yes.
Governor Baker has finally agreed to spend some money to study the North-South Rail Link, but there's a lot more work to be done.
Yes. It really doesn't make sense the way our system formed. And it's been this way in a lot of cities, and a lot of them are doing something about it. Like, for example, Philadelphia had 2 stub-end terminals, and they connected it.
Yeah.
And when I was in Philadelphia, I went from one end to the other very easily.
That's great.
In Boston, we have 2 systems, basically,
Yep.
with a very, very congested, busy subway system in between.
Exactly. And the example I always give is, I have a very close friend of mine who lives in the town of Ayer. Up until recently, she would take the train to North Station, but she worked in the Seaport District, so then she would have to take a shuttle to the Seaport District. So the commute was easily at least an hour and a half to 2 hours each way. And she finally got so sick of that that she quit her job and took another job that was more convenient for her quality of life.
Yes, and it's not fair or
Exactly.
good for the economy to have to limit your search for employees to your part of the city.
Exactly.
If you have a company in Brockton, that you only look for people who are on that line or in that area. Even going into the city and out on another spoke is hard. But if you could search for employees in the whole system and have somebody who could come from Newton, pass through South Station, go to Brockton, or somebody in Fitchburg who wants to work in Quincy, say, well, or someplace that's on the regional rail, it would continue through. There's no need to expand South Station and have a lot of trains just idling during the day, waiting.
Exactly.
They should just continue through the city.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I try to emphasize, how that would improve the frequency and the reliability for the entire MBTA network, including the Fitchburg line.
Oh, yeah. So often I'm going to somewhere south of the city, and I choose to drive.
Yep, exactly.
And I'm always looking to see, can I do it by train? And if I could just pass through the city and do that, it would really help. I've heard of people coming by bus from New Hampshire and somebody was going to a show. I forget. I don't know if this might have been a story at the working group for the North-South Rail Link that I heard. It might have even been Dukakis' story. Why did that person take the bus and not take the train down? Maybe they lived in Portland, Maine. And they said, oh, because the bus station was closer to where I was going. You know, I was going to the theater. And I don't remember the details of it. But the point was that people plan their trips based on where they can easily go. People going on Amtrak. I met somebody on Amtrak who's blind, who lives in Lowell. It was such an ordeal for him to get to South. He was coming from New York. Get to South Station. Go through the rigmarole. It takes about half an hour to get to North Station. Wait for a train to Lowell. He could have just continued on.
Absolutely. And so it's a quality of life issue. I think it would also help the economy. I think that now Massachusetts, especially Eastern Mass commuters, have among the worst commutes in the country. So we're spending the most days just in traffic, and that's time away from family, lack of or reduction in productivity, and just generally impedes on our quality of life.
Oh, yes. How are they going to build it? That incredible tunneling technology. It's
exactly.
A little bit similar to what they did with Porter Square from Harvard Square, where you didn't know it was happening. It was happening underneath. I've seen videos of arrival day. So they have these giant machines that just turn very, very, very slowly and make a tunnel very, very slowly. It's digging and building at the same time.
Sort of
and
a massive
eventually
drill.
It gets to where it's going, breaks through the wall. It builds the tracks right in there. It's really amazing. And they're doing it in all parts of the world.
So we have
the country.
We have the technology. It's really about the political will, obviously the revenue, and getting back to the federal government paying for big infrastructure projects, including North-South Rail Link.
Yes, this is a very exciting, simple infrastructure with wide ramifications. It would really improve the economy in all parts of the city. And
absolutely. And in this area too, and you know that my entire time as a legislator worked to secure the $150, $200 million investment in improving the Fitchburg commuter rail. Did a lot of advocacy for the Worcester commuter rail, which also goes through my district. But at the end of the day, if you're not improving the endpoints, you're not going to dramatically improve the level of service. And I will say, I continue to get complaints from constituents of mine, often who are taking the train from South Acton, that are very unhappy that trains are canceled, they're delayed by 15 to 20 minutes. They feel that Keolis is still not providing the kind of service they should, and that the MBTA is not doing enough to improve the infrastructure throughout Massachusetts, including the commuter rail system.
Yeah, we definitely have to improve it to get more people on the rail. Another thing that would get more people is if we have ways of getting them to and from with first mile, last mile transit. That's the word for getting people that mile from South Acton to their company or from their home to the station. There's no reason you should take this metal box and bring it from your home to the station to sit there all day. You should be able to get there easily.
And do you feel that Crosstown Connect could provide that kind of last mile service, or is it already? Or
yes, well, we have a grant to do more commuter transportation early and late in the day. So I'm hoping that we soon can start busing commuters from the other side of town, rather than just from a lot in West Acton and Mount Calvary. We should be bringing people from North Acton and East Acton to the train stations. And
so they would park somewhere that way, or maybe walk from their home to a place to take the shuttle.
So we're working on that, and we're working on with companies to bring them, say from the Littleton station to Juniper Networks and other companies that are IBM, that are part of Crosstown Connect.
And I think the important thing to emphasize about all these things is that they're also reducing our carbon footprint. They're combating climate change, because the fewer people that are just driving individually in their cars and more in a shuttle or a van service, that's more doing our part to reduce our CO2 emissions. And I know that when some of the parking that I've fought to expand in communities like Littleton with the commuter rail, we've actually gotten numbers about, that extra additional number of commuters taking the train in, the reduction in CO2 emissions, as well as carbon monoxide emissions, reduced throughout Massachusetts.
Yes, and at the same time, they're not steaming with anger because they're not sitting in traffic. They're sitting there reading their papers and their books.
Exactly, the quality of life is better.
Yes, it is.
So we've made a lot of improvements, but I do think there needs to be more. Certainly, there's a conversation now about what kind of service should Massachusetts residents expect from the MBTA. Unfortunately, Governor Baker and the MBTA administration has floated a trial balloon of eliminating weekend commuter rail service, which I'm a strong opponent of because, I think of growing up in South Acton, we could walk to the train with my parents and my sister, take the train to the Red Sox or the Museum of Fine Arts or just enjoying Cambridge or Boston. And whether it's that or people that, of course, take the train to work on the weekends,
yes,
that would be eliminated under this proposal.
Yeah, I was shocked when I saw that they were considering that. I heard that that's one of the things they're considering among several cost-saving measures. So I'm hoping we can fight that off. We should be getting more people onto the rails. I know that Doug Halley, who was our longtime health director in Acton and now is our transportation coordinator, he's always encouraging the MBTA to consider lower fares for going on off-peak times.
Absolutely.
And especially if you go in the reverse commute to out here, you should be given encouragement. Because sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to get a shuttle or some other transportation from Alewife directly to my company in, say, Acton or Littleton. Whereas if they had competitive train prices, that would be preferable.
And that's the other piece, is making sure that the fares are affordable. And if we keep raising fares, there's a breaking point. I think we're already there, quite honestly, where people say, well, it's more economical for me to drive into Alewife or all the way into Boston or Cambridge versus taking the train if it's going to cost me, $300 plus a month or $12 or $15 a day.
Yes, yeah, it is.
So we have to work on that affordable piece and, how that relates to how state revenues are raised and how do we better fund the system and make it fair for everyone to have that access to, to work, to recreation, to general quality of life.
Definitely. Maybe we could have group rates. Because sometimes when I'm going in with 4 people, I think, oh, wow, 4 train fares compared to sharing parking and a car. But I would take the train.
Yeah.
That's significant for some people. And the fares are not as significant to the whole system. Fares never pay for transportation. Transportation never pays for itself. That's something I always have to remind people of. They say, when is the Acton system going to be paying for itself? Well, never. Our roads don't pay for themselves. Our police don't pay for themselves. The library doesn't. Transportation doesn't. It's one of the services we provide to make life livable and better for people. And more equitable.
Well, Franny, I always appreciate your enthusiasm. I always say we need more municipal officials who are forward-thinking and coming up with bold ideas. So thank you for joining me today, and thank you for checking in on another edition of Half Hour on the Hill. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge.